Welcome, everybody. My name is Anders Hector. I'm Science and Innovation Counselor at the Embassy of Sweden. I will be the MC for the first section, for the first section of the first session. I just want to say that everything we say here will be translated, and you can choose to follow a stream in Korean or in English, depending on your preference, on the website, nobelmemorialprogram.kr. And on the website, you can also propose questions on Slido. And even if you're here in the audience, you can go to the website and propose questions. And we suggest that you do that. Let me introduce the host for the Sweden-Korea Nobel Memorial Program, the Ambassador of Sweden to the Republic of Korea, His Excellency Daniel Wolvin.
Thank you, Anders. It's such a pleasure to welcome everybody to this symposium on the Nobel Prizes of this year, 2022. Great to see people are turning up here in the auditorium, and a special welcome also to those joining us online today. This symposium is held as part of the Nobel Memorial Program, which the Embassy organizes with the support of 3 leading Swedish universities, KTH, Royal Institute of Technology, Lund University, and Umeå University. And the larger objective of the Nobel Memorial Week is to deepen collaboration between Sweden and Korea within the areas of education, research, and innovation. And the more specific objective of these symposia is really to stimulate curiosity about the Nobel Prizes that have been awarded this year, and also to stimulate curiosity about the amazing discoveries and the sheer intellectual ambition that have led to these Nobel Prizes. We will hear today from Swedish and Korean experts about their view on the awards, about the work behind the discoveries and what these discoveries can mean for all of us, including in the context of South Korea. And another important reason for organizing this event is also to create a meeting space for Korean and Swedish academics, and equally important for students and for the general public here in Korea. I want to extend my great thanks to the Korean partners that are supporting us in this endeavor. President of Seoul National University, Oh Se-jung, who we have here in the audience. Of course, the President of the Korea Academy of Science and Technology, Yoo Ok-jun, who is with us here, and President Sylvie Carlson of KTH, Vice Chancellors and other distinguished guests from Swedish universities. Let me just say also, since we are here in a university setting, that we are cognizant that these Nobel Symposia this year take place just after the period of national mourning over the tragic accident in Itaewon has ended. And this is a tragedy, I think, acutely felt for everyone who live in South Korea, and perhaps even more so at university campuses. And on behalf of my country, I wanted to take this opportunity also to extend our heartfelt condolences. Let me finish this brief introduction by saying also 2 words about Alfred Nobel and about the historical circumstances surrounding the Nobel Prize. On November 27th, 1895, Alfred Nobel signed his will at the Swedish-Norwegian Club in Paris. And when this will was opened after his death, it caused a lot of controversy, as Alfred Nobel, as we now know, had left much of his wealth for the establishment of a prize. So his family opposed the establishment of the Nobel Prize, and the prize awarders that he named at first refused to do what he had stipulated in his will. So it was 5 years before the first Nobel Prize could be awarded in 1901. And I think everyone here is aware, in an excerpt of the will, Alfred Nobel dictated that his entire remaining estate should be used to endow prizes to those who, during the preceding year, have conferred the greatest benefit to humankind. And that is what we will hear about here today. Thank you very much.
Thank you. And next, I welcome to the stage Sejong Oh, the president of Seoul National University.
Your Excellency, Ambassador of Sweden, Daniel Volben, President Yu Jun from the Korea Academy of Science and Technology, President Sigrid Carlson from KTH Royal Institute of Technology, Deputy Vice Chancellor Lena Eskilsson from Lund University, and Provost Vice Chancellor Katrin Liklund from Lund Umeå University. It's a great honor and pleasure to be a part of this celebration for the Sweden-Korea Nobel Memorial Program this year. As you know, for the past 2 years, the COVID pandemic had prevented the Swedish delegation from visiting Korea, and the Swedish-Korea Nobel Memorial Program, therefore, had to be held in an online format only. Now, in the third year of this program, we are finally able to meet and hold this meaningful event face-to-face, with the Swedish delegation finally visiting Korea, including the President and Vice President of KTH Royal Institute of Technology, Lund University, and Umeå University. We at Seoul National University are delighted to welcome you on our campus in this special year. The Nobel Prize is awarded to scholars who looked beyond existing frameworks by constantly questioning what we take for granted and exploring novel domains. The Nobel Prize calls for us to break away from the status quo and always move forward in all areas of human society. As such, it provides humankind with a strong drive and motivation to seek continuous innovation. In other words, the Nobel Prize fosters an environment for change and innovation crucial for humanity. It is unfortunate that Seoul National University has yet to see one of our alumni or faculty members win a Nobel Prize yet, but I hope that the holding this program on our campus here today will provide new inspiration for our students and researchers to become Nobel Prize winners in the future. For change and innovation to occur, it is necessary to establish an environment that encourages scholars to explore different fields and develop diverse experiences rather than narrowly focusing on one area of research. This is because collaboration and exchange between people across borders and fields give rise to synergy and new ideas between different fields, generating creative feedback that could not have been possible otherwise. This creative feedback obtained from this melting pot of ideas become the fuel for realizing new developments both at the individual and national level. In fact, this morning, researchers from the 3 Swedish universities and Seoul National University held active and fruitful exchange in the fields of physics, chemistry, life science, economics, and literature. The deans and provosts of international affairs of those 4 universities also joined together to discuss how they could learn from each other and promote cooperation. In this sense, the Swedish-Korea Nobel Memorial Program is an event that not only distributes knowledge, but also plays a role as a catalyst for mutual growth in our intellectual pursuit. I sincerely thank the Swedish Embassy, Korean Academy of Science and Technology, the 3 Swedish universities, and our university staff for creating this meaningful opportunity for all of us. Such crossover exchange enables us to accept new perspective and break down the walls that limit our way of thinking. A bright future awaits us if we allow our students to grow in an educational environment that encourages them to move freely between the borders of different academic fields. Given this importance of multidisciplinary approach in our curricula, Seoul National University recently announced the ambitious plan to break down the barriers between majors, departments, and colleges. In this plan, our goal is to allow our students to explore different majors without being committed to a particular field prematurely. Furthermore, we're also giving more autonomy to our professors so that they can engage in interdisciplinary education research and develop new majors and curriculums. This strategic plan for eliminating the barriers between academic units was not born overnight. We developed this ambitious plan through endless brainstorming sessions, committee meetings, and consulting experts on various corners of our campus. We presented our opinions and beliefs, discussed, argued, fought sometimes, persuaded each other, and then finally embraced each other. In the same way, the session that follow will provide opportunity for all of us to derive new ideas, insights from the lectures on innovations in science, economics, and literature. I hope that our collective efforts will provide a vital intellectual nourishment that will inspire many generations to come in their future studies and research. Thank you again for sharing this honorable moment with us, and I express our sincere sympathy for victims and families of Itaewon incidents. Thank you very much.
Thank you, President. And now I would like to ask to the stage Professor Ok-Jun Yoo, President of KAST, Korea Academy of Science and Technology.
Ladies and gentlemen, I am very pleased to welcome all of you and to have an opportunity to give an opening remarks for Sweden-Korea Nobel Memorial Program as President of the Korean Academy of Science and Technology. My name is Ok-Jun Yoo. First of all, I would like to extend my sincere appreciation to all the audience, including online audience, for taking your valuable time to attend today's event. I would also like to extend my sincere gratitude to His Excellency Daniel Volben, Ambassador of Sweden to the Republic of Korea. I'm also well aware that we takes care of all the details. As if he becomes the main producer of the Nobel Memorial Program every year. In addition, I know that this could not be possible to hold without considerate support from Seoul National University. In this regard, I would like to leave my deepest appreciation to Professor Oh Se-jung, President of Seoul National University. I would also convey my sincere appreciation to Professor Sigrid Carlson, President of KTH, for your generous support ever since this program launched. The Sweden-Korea Nobel Memorial Program has to be held only via online, like just President Oh told us, due to the COVID-19 for the last 2 years. Thus, what makes me happier is that I can see you, the audience, in person right now. I think Ambassador Daniel Volben would feel the same way as I do. Korea has made a lot of progress over the years. As you all know, just 50 years ago, Korea was one of the poorest countries. In order to overcome this poverty, government and individuals have worked very hard and have currently grown into one of the world's number 10 largest economies. Science and technology played a key role in this growth of our country. In particular, the heavy and chemical industries such as semiconductors, steel, automobiles, shipbuilding, and construction business have led to rapid growth. As a scientist, I'm also grateful and proud that I and all the scientists sitting here together today today could contribute to make our country better. However, due to the technology-oriented policies, governmental supports for basic science that requires creativity and time were relatively neglected. I think that this may be one of the reasons why we haven't received the Nobel Prize for Science yet. It is often said that the age of Korean basic science is around 30 years old. It means that the history of basic science in Korea is relatively short than other developed countries. However, the short history does not mean the level of basic science is low. We have many world-renowned scientists in various fields, and science technology policies are gradually being established to support them. What we are going to do today is to listen the values and meanings of this year's Nobel Prize for Physics, Chemistry, and Physiology or Medicine from the experts from Korea and Sweden, respectively. I hope today's Nobel Memorial Program will be an opportunity to create new interests for those who were not interested in basic science and to give greater enthusiasm for those who were already interested. Furthermore, I hope that everyone here, and including the people listening online, will learn today what scientific research deserves a Nobel Prize and who or what kind of person can create and perform Nobel Prize level research. I would also believe that one of you will be the future Nobel laureate for science. And I would like to end my welcoming remarks with conveying my special thanks to all the speakers from Sweden and Korea for sparing their priceless time and for sharing their valuable knowledge. Thank you very much.
Thank you, President. And next to the stage is Professor Sigbritt Karlsson, President of KTH Royal Institute of Technology.
Your Excellence, distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen, I'm really happy to be here in Korea and take part for the first time in real life in the Nobel Memorial Program. And what we're doing today is really to pre-celebrate the Nobel Prize laureates, which all will gather in Stockholm to the 10th of December to receive their medals. We will soon listen to the research results that led to the awards of 2022. For Sweden, celebrating the Nobel Prizes every year in December makes us proud to be part of it, but it also gives us an opportunity to learn, get inspired, and also the inspiration comes to see how dedicated people, dedicated creative people, and determined people pursue their line of research or their authorship in the Literature Prize. It's important for a small country in the Nordic Europe. We have just seen the map over the world, and we are used to having Sweden pretty much in the center, but we are in the northern part of Europe. We are a small country. For us to have the possibility to meet scientists from all around the world in December is really a privilege. It also demonstrates that science are without borders. This is even more important in the present times of geopolitical troubles, that the scientific community continues to do joint research, which helps us finding solution to the different challenges we face today. Humanities, social sciences, economics, natural sciences, engineering, science, and medicine, they're all really important for decreasing climate change and deliver on the 17 SDG goals. And I would like to say that the Literature Prize nudges us all to reflect on what it means to be a human being. I really look forward to this afternoon and welcomes you to these different presentations. And thank you very much all who are here and the ones that are listening online. And remember 3 words that makes a Nobel laureate: curious, creative, and determined. I think these are the 3 words that mark a scientist or an author to deliver and continue to deliver. Thank you.
Thank you, President, and thank you everybody for these welcoming and congratulatory remarks. And now I would like to introduce the moderator for the Sciences session, Professor Magnus Viktorsson. Magnus is a professor at KTH, Royal Institute of Technology. Welcome.
Yes, thank you. Thank you so much. It's a great honor for me to be the moderator of this first part for the first 3 Nobel Prizes within sciences. The first category of the Nobel Prizes that we'll talk about is the Nobel Prize in Physiology or Medicine. It's a thrilling category. It concerns health, care, well-being, and in this year also the fundamentals for exploring the history of human. So from a personal note, I think this is one of the most thrilling prizes of them all. And fortunately we have 2 experts and guides with us to explain these prizes and discuss them. So I would like to introduce to the stage Professor Katrin Riklund from Umeå University and Assistant Professor Chong-Won Chong from Seoul National University. Please. So, we will have brief introductions of these prizes. And first I would like to introduce Professor Katrin Riklund. Professor Riklund is the Pro Vice Chancellor of Umeå University, is responsible for research and doctoral education of medicine, natural science, and technology at that university. She received a degree of Master of Science in Medicine at Umeå in '88, and then completing her PhD, becoming a professor of diagnostic radiology at Umeå University. And we're really eager to hear more what this prize is about. Please.
Thank you.
Professor.
So thank you so much for that kind introduction. Being a radiologist is to have a special relation to the Nobel Prize. You know, the first Nobel Prize, 1901, was won by Wilhelm Conrad Röntgen. And then all different modalities in my work has received Nobel Prizes. So I'm really, really very proud to be standing here. And would like to say, Your Excellence, Mr. Ambassador, dear hosts, distinguished professors, colleagues from Seoul and Sweden, ladies and gentlemen, on site and in the air. I'm very proud to have the possibility to present the Nobel Prize winner in Medicine or Physiology 2022, Svante Pääbo. He is awarded the prize for his discoveries concerning the genomes of extinct hominids and human evolution. Svante Pääbo himself was born 1955 in Stockholm. He defended his PhD thesis in Uppsala in 1986, and then he went to Zurich for a postdoc in Switzerland and later on to University of California, Berkeley in USA. He was appointed as a professor at University of Munich in Germany in 1990, and he also funded a Max Planck Institute for Evolutionary Anthropology in Leipzig in 1999. He is also an adjunct professor at Okinawa Institute of Science and Technology in Japan. And now a little bit more to the prize. There are some questions that we tend to discuss late evenings, early mornings, now and then, in different settings. Where do we come from? Why are we here? Are we different? What makes us unique? And through Pääbo's pioneering research, we have getting closer to the answers. And we have also got another extinct hominin beside the Neanderthals, the Denisova, which he has discovered. The Homo sapiens first appeared in Africa approximately 300,000 years ago, while our closest known relatives, Neanderthals, developed outside Africa and populated Europe and Western Asia from around 400,000 years until approximately 30,000 years ago, at which point they went extinct. So, what have he done and what have he found? As a postdoctoral student, together with Alan Wilson, another pioneer in the field of evolutionary biology, Pääbo started to develop methods to study DNA from Neanderthals, an endeavor that lasted several decades. And by the end of the 1990s, almost the entire human genome had been sequenced from a very small remnants of very old bones in the Neanderthals. And this was a considerable accomplishment, which allowed subsequent studies of the genetic relationships between different human populations. He continued his work at University of Munich, and he did a lot of work on archaic DNA, and he decided to analyze DNA from Neanderthals' mitochondria, organelles in cells that contain their own DNA, and he developed the methods, and he managed to sequence a region of mitochondrial DNA from a 40,000-year-old piece of bone. And that was the first time that we had access to a sequence from an extinct relative. When the DNA has been lying in the ground for thousands of years, it's really destroyed. It's in small fragments. It's mixed up with other DNA from animals, from the people who are doing the archaeology work and so on. So it was really a challenge to create these new methods. And he continued his work, and in comparison with contemporary humans and chimpanzees, he demonstrated that the Neanderthals were genetically distinct from each other. You can see the blue line, and you can see the diverging orange and yellow lines, which are other hominid species. And you can see that it was more than 7 million years since we divided from the chimpanzees. So, he continued to compare with contemporary humans and chimpanzees, and he showed that we are really genetically distinct from the Neanderthals. But the one of the colors, the yellow one, is something else. In 2008, he discovered the Denisova in Siberia, and that hominid is also totally distinct from the Neanderthals and us, the today's hominids. About 70,000 years ago, groups of Homo sapiens migrated from Africa to the Middle East, and from there they spread to the rest of the world, and at least 2 extinct hominin populations inhabited Eurasia, the Neanderthals in the west and the Denisovans in the east. And you can see on the painting how our former hominids spread out over the world. And thanks to Svante Pääbo's groundbreaking discoveries, we now better understand human evolution and migration over the globe, and also that archaic gene sequences from our extinct relatives influence the physiology of present-day humans. One such example is the Denisovian version of the gene EPA as one which confers an advantage for survival at high altitudes, and this gene is common among present-day Tibetans. Another example are Neanderthal genes that affect our immune response to different types of infection. And we know that today we have a couple of percentage of Neanderthal genes in our human genomes. And the ongoing research focuses on analyzing the functional implications of the genetic differences with the goal to explain what makes the Homo sapiens us unique. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Professor Eklund, for that explanation. I'm then honored and glad to welcome our next speaker to this important award, Assistant Professor Chong-Won Chong. Chong-Won Chong is an assistant professor of the School of Biological Science here at the Seoul National University. Obtained his doctoral degree from the University of Chicago for the genetic history of Tibetans and their altitude adaptations, and currently studies the genetic history of human populations. So a very suitable presenter. And may I also introduce the translation possibilities that you have. For us that understand English better, you can turn to the channel 2 in these. Thank you. Please.
안녕하십니까? Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. I am the Korean presenter for the science session of the Sweden-Korea Nobel Memorial Program. I will be talking about the achievements of Dr. Febo, who was awarded the Nobel Prize in Physiology and Medicine. Before I begin, allow me to give you the definition of archaic hominins. What you see on the screen is a phylogenetic tree of the relationship between chimpanzees and modern humans, known as Homo sapiens. You can see where the red line and the blue line meet. This is when humans and chimpanzees diverged roughly 6 million years ago. And you can see that since diverging then, humans and chimpanzees went their separate ways. And modern humans are known to have originated in Africa about 300,000 years ago. The part highlighted in red on the phylogenetic tree refers to archaic hominins. In other words, archaic humans refer to extinct species that were closer to modern humans than chimpanzees, but more distant to modern humans than they are to each other. I'm sure you've heard of Australopithecus or Neanderthals. These are all examples of archaic hominins. Professor Febo is recognized for his achievement in clearly defining the evolutionary relation between archaic hominins and modern humans by applying genetics to the research of archaic hominins, which used to rely solely on morphological features and stone tools. And also, since first releasing the study on the draft sequence of the Neanderthal genome, his research team has continued to add to this list of archaic hominin genomes as illustrated on this map. Among these, all are Neanderthals genomes, with the exception of Cima de los Huesos and Denisovans from the Denisovan cave. And most of the research here on the chart has been done by Dr. Febo's team, so it is no surprise that he is the sole recipient for this achievement in the physiology and medicine part. So then where and when did Neanderthals, the focus of Dr. Febo's research, live? As you can see here, classic Neanderthals lived in Europe from roughly 250,000 years ago to 40,000 years ago. They spread out sporadically to some regions in the Middle East and Central Asia, as you can see here on the map. So they did inhabit a very large area. Dr. Febo's research also proved that archaic humans who lived in Spain 43,000 years ago are also from the Neanderthal lineage. Dr. Febo's research also shows that modern humans outside of Africa share around 2% of Neanderthal DNA. And what is interesting is that this can be found among modern humans in Europe and the Middle East and regions where Neanderthals never lived in East Asia, Oceania, and the Americas, where Neanderthals did not live. So as you can see in this diagram, Neanderthal DNA segments are found in overlapping regions in different continental populations. You can see where you can find the Neanderthal DNA displayed in red. What this diagram shows is that DNA segments overlap in regions in different continental populations. So then how did East Asians inherit Neanderthal genes, and why does everyone have the Neanderthal gene in the same place in equal proportions? This is easily explained if their common ancestor acquired Neanderthal genes before the current continental populations diverged. The Middle East is where modern humans first spread out of Africa. So the Middle East is where modern humans first spread out of Africa, where Neanderthals were living at the time. By estimation, using the length of the Neanderthal gene fragment possessed by modern humans, the Neanderthal gene is estimated to have been introduced about 60,000 years ago, coinciding with the time modern humans entered the Middle East. In other words, modern humans left Africa, had offspring with Neanderthals almost right after, and their descendants spread all over the world, carrying genes of both modern humans and Neanderthals. So what kind of ancient humans were living in East Asia when Neanderthals lived in Europe and when modern humans entered East Asia via the Middle East? The map here shows archaic human fossils found in East Asia. Among them, a genome similar to that of Neanderthals but distinctly different was found from a finger bone excavated in the Denisovan cave, and they are called Denisovans. So without the exception of Denisovans, we have not been able to do DNA sequencing for all the rest on the map here. So there is, however, a high likelihood that many of the ancient fossils from hominids that lived in East Asia during similar times are close to Denisovans. And so this is a new hypothesis that arose as a result of the work of Dr. Febo. What is interesting is that Denisovans have made significant genetic contributions to the indigenous people of Australia and New Guinea and some hunter-gatherers in the Philippines. They inherited about 5% of their genomes from archaic Denisovan ancestors. Denisovan variants in many immune genes were under positive natural selection in Australasians. And there was actually a very high ratio of positive natural selection. This diagram shows a very important example of the CD33 gene variant allele frequency in groups across the world. In most parts of the world, only the modern human allele shown in brown is present, and there's no mutation at all. However, you can see very high rates of Denisovan variants shown in purple in populations in New Guinea and surrounding areas. And this shows that the genetic heritage of archaic hominins have a significant impact on our lives and health. And another very important case example would be the EPAS1. This is what we can find in continental East Asians who carry a minuscule portion of Denisovan genes. EPAS1, a key gene that helps Tibetans breathe easy at a high altitude, low oxygen environment, has been found to contain Denisovan Denisovan DNA segment distinct to Tibetans. This DNA segment is hardly found in populations other than Tibetans, but is present in very high proportions among Tibetans. As you can see, the EPAS DNA segment of Tibetans is significantly different from the others across the world. In fact, the closest sequence contains 40 mutations. On the other hand, there are only 9 mutations when compared with the Denisovan EPAS1 DNA segment. This is evidence that the EPAS DNA segment found in modern Tibetans originated from Denisovans or other archaic hominins very close to Denisovans. So you can see that through Dr. Febo's work, we can see that Neanderthals and ancestors of modern humans diverged around 600,000 years ago, and Denisovans are cousins of the Neanderthals. And modern humans left Africa, mated with Neanderthals in the Middle East 600,000 years ago, and their descendants spread out across the world. As a result, 2% of genomes of all modern humans outside of Africa are inherited from Neanderthals. And some modern humans who returned to East Asia and moved on to New Guinea and Australia via Southeast Asia, during which they acquired Denisovan DNA, and resulting in around 5% of their genome coming from Denisovan ancestors. Some continental East Asians, including Tibetans, have some Denisovan genes. The morphological features and distribution of Denisovans are yet to be known. Therefore, paleogenetical research of Asian archaic humans is likely to be helpful in further understanding overall human evolution. So with that, I would like to conclude my presentation. Thank you for listening.
Thank you so much for introducing this to us, to all of us. I think it's a very fascinating subject. For me, it raises the questions: how many finger bones haven't we found? How many other archaic humanoids were there actually? And I mean, we only found a few pieces. If I first turn to you,
yeah, sure.
What would you say makes this study of our archaic humanoids so important for us?
I mean, it's a truly intellectual opportunity that we think of, like, as she said, like what makes human a human. That's one thing. That the evolutionary biology is fundamentally on the comparison between the related species or groups or other taxa. And our closest comparison point is chimpanzee, that has split us from us for 6 million years ago. And 6 million years ago is a lot, and a lot of changes has accumulated, and we cannot fully disintegrate like those changes into what's important for what we think important to make humans versus not. But by having a much closer contact, a point of comparison, the Neanderthals, we can make this much easier, much more pronounced that what kind of changes has made since our split from Neanderthal, and what changes we are sharing with Neanderthal. That's on an evolutionary biologist perspective, that's a very useful point of comparison. But at the same time, the Neanderthals are human, and they have very complex behavior. They have even bigger brains than us, and they made a very complex social lives. And they have been very successful and survived in this harsh Arctic and Palearctic environment for hundreds of thousands of years. So that makes us think of what makes the humans, and that can be a plural answers in there. And I think that's intellectually a lot to us to think of.
Yeah. Thank you. Do you have any reflections on this? What makes this research so important?
Well, it raises a lot of curiosity.
Yes.
What happened when we divide?
Yeah.
Why did we divide? Why did they get extinct? Why are we here? Why did we survive? Why didn't they? And also it gives another picture that we are Homo sapiens. We are one race, not many. We are different color and different sizes and so on, but we are all Homo sapiens. And these genetic maps also show that.
Yeah.
We are one race.
Yes.
And it's very important information.
Yes.
And we should use it carefully.
Thank you.
But there is, of course, a lot of questions, and I hope that, as you say, we will find more connections and more qualified guesses on why we are as we are, what makes us so unique, why can we live in houses and survive, and not the other animals, so to say.
Yeah.
So but another thing is the methodological development that he has done. And you can also see that multi-scientific, multidisciplinary work can go together and enhance results. Because the research on genomes, it's not only for the extinct hominids, it's for everything. It's for cancer, it's for precision medicine, and so on. And here you can really see that methods development can increase the output from several research areas. And it's also important.
Yes. Thank you. I didn't mention that, but if you have any questions, I'm sure we can communicate them in any way. So please don't be afraid to raise a hand if you would like to raise a question. Yes, thank you. I actually had that question myself. This work, of course, we don't have Professor Pääbo here, but this work that he and his team has done, are there other application areas that this is important for than only studying, so to say, the background of humans? And you were touching upon it.
Yes, I would like to say.
Yes.
Maybe you would like to.
Yeah, I think, I mean, it's all about highly degraded DNA and also about how to interpret the evolutionary information out of those. And as an internal insider of this field, that I have seen that the developments of these, like, biochemical methods to extract and sequence the highly degraded DNAs, and that can be directly applied to, for example, many disciplines like forensic sciences.
Yeah.
For example, that's much narrower cases, but it's still. And then it opened up like a huge subfield of archaeology, that's archaeogenetics, that understands the human diversity within our species and changes in this diversity over time for the historical and prehistorical time periods. And at the same time, like all these statistical and population genetic analysis methods that extracts evolutionary information out of these genome sequences have co-developed with the advances in genetics technology and advances with the accumulation of those like important specimens in terms of genomes. And so in those senses, and that can be applied to many fields like cancer evolution, but all the other wildlife's genetics and so forth. So it's a huge implication. It's also basically a test bed for how to understand evolution out of genome sequences.
Yes, thank you. Another observation is that in this case, it's a single person that gets the prize, so to say. In many cases, you have a number of persons that share a prize from same team or from some kind of collaboration or simultaneous collaboration. Research is often done in teams. Is this problematic, would you say? Is this obvious that only he should have it? I don't know if you can't have an opinion on this specific case, perhaps more generic.
More generic. Well, the Nobel Prize is a personal prize.
Yes.
Given to a person. And I think research has developed a lot since the Nobel Prize was initiated. And at that time, earlier on, research was very much one person, male thing. And then it has evolved, and now there are a lot of groups, and you are working collaborating together, do research together. But still, it's a personal prize. Yes. And over the year, there has been more or less discussion about if it's the right person, the correct person that gained the prize, because research breakthrough is always, I would like to say, a work with many people. But I think that Pääbo is the perfect and correct person to have this Nobel Prize.
I also agree. Like his work is fundamentally interdisciplinary, and it's fundamentally a teamwork. That he needs a specialist for developing biochemical advances. He also needs population genetics to interpret those and many things. But at the same time, it's really his creativity and his determined will to go through in this direction and makes this really seemingly impossible thing happen. And he has been doing this almost alone in the world since 1980s, and everyone else was doing the similar things with more easily accessible things like human DNA from a person living today. But he really went through that. It's important, and it's a breakthrough. And then he made this decades-long journey to make the Neanderthal genomes available. And I think that determined movement and that determined academic activities deserves a single prize. I think so.
Thank you. Do you have any reflections apart from this small questions I posed on this prize, or where are we heading? What is the next? You coming from the field specifically, Professor Jong? What is the urgent research questions posed in the field?
I mean, it's now really a thriving field of looking into the genomes of like that individual that passed away a long time ago, and I think you just open the gate and no one knows what's gonna be in the next turn. Like who knows like what kind of bones that the museums have been holding for decades will return us something completely unexpected. Yes. Who knows? I have seen that in a smaller scales in terms of like modern human genetic diversity and history. And thinking of like the archaic hominins, thinking of other species that are extinct, or even within the conspecifics, the extinct populations, then I don't know, that will be a lot. That will be a lot of surprises and all these surprising discoveries that will be coming are based on his decades-long works. So yeah, I'm very excited to see the more advances and more things to come.
Yes.
I think that the genome technology will drive also the research on very old bones and findings more rapidly, because just a couple of decades ago it took weeks to extract the genome information from DNA, and now it's more or less an instant test. And if you have instant test, you have the possibility to do a high number of analyses. And there are, as you say, there must be a lot of bones out there that you can analyze. Yeah. So for Pebos and your research field, I think this will really speed up the content of knowledge from the old bones in the ground, so to say, or other way. But the genome technology, we now have the 1 million genome project, where we do whole genome sequencing on many persons. And it will give us a lot of new information about proteomics, genomics, other omics that give us a picture on a healthy, a pre-diseased individual or a diseased individual. So it's a lot of knowledge that will follow this. But I also think that his methodology will continue to develop, and he will have even faster techniques and need even smaller fragments of bones to be able to extract the genome. Yeah. So
that's really
it will not stop here, so to say.
No, I guess we're only in the very beginning of this DNA.
More or less.
Yes. So by that, I think we can end this session, and I thank you so much for contributing and explaining this topic for us.
Thank you.
Thank you.
So now we move on to the next Nobel Prize category. After reading in briefly on the prize on physics, I think this is perhaps an even more thrilling area. All of this starts and ends with physics in some sense, in a way. And this year's prize enabling quantum information, where these two particles where two particles behave like a single unit even when they're separated, it kind of makes the mind blow. And if that is not thrilling, what is? So as for the earlier prize, we're fortunate enough to have two experts here guiding us, explaining and reflecting on this year's prize. And I would like to welcome Professor Anna Delin and Professor Yunmi Chai. Thank you. Yeah, Yunmi Chai. Yes. So first we have Professor Anna Delin, a full professor at KTH since 2011. She leads a research group focusing on magnetic and quantum phenomena in materials, and she's currently also deputy head of the School of Engineering Sciences at KTH, Royal Institute of Technology. Professor Delin received a PhD in condensed matter physics from Uppsala University and have received several awards and recognitions for her work. So very welcome, Professor Anna Delin, to introducing the topic for us.
So, Your Excellence, ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, thanks for having me. I'm very honored to be here. And I have the pleasure to briefly present this year's Nobel Prize in Physics. So I'll start with the awardees. Do you hear me this? Oh, okay. So here we have our three awardees. It's Alan Aspect, John Clauser, and Anton Zeilinger for experiments with entangled photons, establishing the violation of Bell inequalities and pioneering quantum information science. Alan Aspect, John Clauser, and Anton Zeilinger have each conducted groundbreaking experiments using entangled quantum states, where two particles behave like a single unit, even when they are separated. The results have cleared the way for new technology based upon quantum information. Let's disentangle the physics behind this prize and why their work is so groundbreaking. So here we have Isaac Newton doing experiments with light. Before the advent of quantum mechanics, we thought that the world was deterministic. That is, if we know enough information about the system beforehand, then in principle, we could determine everything about the system in the future and also in the past. This was very compelling. After all, Newton's equation of motion had worked incredibly well, so why should this principle not apply to everything? Well, unfortunately for determinists, we stumbled upon quantum mechanics, and quantum mechanics does not play well for determinism. It is by its nature probabilistic. This did not sit well with many scientists at the time, including Einstein. Proving that quantum mechanics has this nature was a crucial part of the 2022 Nobel Prize. Einstein was a firm believer that quantum mechanics was indeed incomplete and that there should be some kind of hidden variables that we had just not yet discovered. In order to demonstrate this, he, with two other authors, presented a paper in 1935 titled, "Can quantum mechanical description of physical reality be considered complete?" In his work, they outlined a thought experiment that came to be known as the Einstein-Podolsky-Rosen paradox, or EPR paradox for short. So the thought experiment had to do with quantum entanglement. Let's say you have a system made up of two interacting electrons with a total spin of 0. So they have opposite spins, either like that or like that, perhaps. Each electron has a spin, which can either be in the spin up or spin down state. The quantum entanglement of these two electrons produces an interesting state where if one of the electrons is measured to be in the spin up state, the other one must be in the spin down state. Any quantum system can be described with a wave function, describing all possible states of the system. However, when you measure a wave function, it collapses to a single state, a single eigenvalue. So by measuring, we destroy the wave function. When two particles are entangled, they are described with a joint wave function. So if you measure one of the electrons, the wave function collapses for both the particles at the same time. Now here's the crux of the thought experiment. What would happen if you took two of these entangled particles and then separated them? by a great distance, a macroscopic distance. Let's say they were separated by several kilometers. In this state, if you could measure one of the electron spins and get, say, spin up, then instantaneously the other electron would become spin down, which would appear to break causality, since it seems that the information passes from the measured electron to the unmeasured one instantaneously. That is faster than the speed of light. This seemed to so weird for the scientists that it could not be true. And so one thought quantum mechanics must be incomplete. For many years, there was no way to tell the difference between this Einstein theory of hidden variables and standard quantum entanglement. This was until 1964, when John Bell suggested that there was indeed a way to test if hidden variables were true or not. This test would become known as Bell's inequality test. It relies on the observation that when measuring a quantum state, we have freedom to choose how we want to measure it. Each electron in our interacting particle pair can have either spin up or down, but they could just as easily have spin left or spin right, or anything in between. It all depends on how you measure them, that is, what you define as up. So spin up can be that, or yeah. John Bell said that in the scenario where you measure one electron to see if it is spin up or down, defining up as parallel to the vertical axis, and then you measure the second electron at an angle, some angle to the vertical direction, there is a difference in the outcomes between hidden variable theory and quantum mechanics. Basically, by measuring the probability of certain outcomes, you can determine if there are any hidden variables. In the figure here, you see the experimentally measured confidence rates or correlations of the two particle detections as a function of the angles between the polarizer axis from John Clauser and co-workers. So the angles between the spin left and spin right particle, let's say. They used photons and not electrons, but the principle is the same. The solid curve is what quantum mechanics predicts, and the points are their measurements. And with this data, it is possible to show that Bell's inequality test is violated. Right. Thus, John Clauser developed John Bell's ideas, leading to a practical experiment. When he took the measurements, they supported quantum mechanics by clearly violating the Bell inequality, suggesting that hidden variables do not exist. And here's an actual photograph of the original Bell test experimental setup somewhere in the middle of the 60s, together with a young John Clauser. He was a postdoc at the time. Like all theoretical results, Bell inequalities are derived under certain assumptions. One of these was a particular concern of Bell himself, the assumption that the two measurement angles are completely independent of each other, that they are randomly chosen. That's where Alan Aspect comes in. He developed an experiment and used it in a way that closed this important loophole. He was able to switch the measurement settings after an entangled pair had left its source, so the settings that existed when they were emitted could not affect the results. The experiments of Clauser and Aspect opened the eyes of the physics community to the profound importance of quantum entanglement, and that entanglement quantum states can stretch out to become macroscopically large. Bell pairs, as such entangled states are called, came to be thought of as a quantum resource. This resource has become central for and usable for the rapidly developing field of quantum information science, thanks to our third Nobel laureate, Anton Zeilinger, who figured out how to experimentally teleport an arbitrary quantum state from one position to another. With his teleportation protocol, it has now become possible to use quantum states for new ways of storing, transferring, and processing information. And I wish to acknowledge the sources I've used for this talk. It's the copy of press releases, the Royal Society of Academy of Sciences in Sweden, images from Wikipedia, and the science blog Science Discussed. Thank you for your attention.
Thank you so much, Professor Delin.
Thank you.
So I would now like to introduce Associate Professor Yoon-Mi Choi. Yoon-Mi Choi is, as I said, an Associate Professor at the Department of Physics at Korea University. You joined Korea University in 2020 after a PhD in Harvard University and assistant professorship in the University of Tokyo. Research interests of Professor Choi includes quantum simulation, computation using ultra-cold molecules, quantum engineering on chemical reactions, and manipulating atoms and molecules using optical frequency combs. So we're delighted to have you here. And once again, Channel 2 for the ones of us not so fluent in Korean.
Thank you very much for the invitation and introducing me. And it is my great pleasure to be here in this honorable event to introduce this year's Nobel Physics Prize here. And from here, I'll switch to Korean. 네, 안녕하세요.
Hello, everyone. My name is Tae-eun-mi. I'm a professor at Korea University. I'll talk about entanglement and the very foundation of quantum technology. First and foremost, as Professor Delin mentioned, entanglement was what drove the Nobel Prize this year for physics. And these three professors became the laureates. And the previous speaker talked about how these three professors violated the Bell's inequality. So I would like to talk about the quantum technology. But first, let us go over entanglement. Entanglement or entangled state refers to the state of one particle determining the state of the other particle. Let's say that a particle can either have a blue or pink state, and the state is unknown, or when the two have superposition, when they share the state, then the particle has a purple state. Then in the quantum world, the particle is in a wave state before you observe the particle. So it's, as I mentioned, blue or pink, but there's no way to find out until observation, which is why we say that the particle has a purple state. So you have two of these particles, and let's say that they entangle, they become entangled. Even when separated by vast distances, they become entangled and remain connected. Then, this is what happens. Well, at first, this is purple because this is prior to observation. However, the state of one particle is now observed. Then, immediately at that specific moment, we know that the other pair is also blue. And when identified as pink, then its far separated partner will also be pink. As such, quantum entanglement has been used to drive the second revolution of quantum technology. We are seeing the advent of quantum communication, cryptography, sensing, as well as computing. And entanglement has become the very foundation of all quantum technology. So today, I will briefly talk about how entanglement enables quantum cryptography and quantum computing. First, this is quantum cryptography. This is about communicating message. So you have a sender and a receiver, and you have the communication channel. So the one who wants to send the information, let's say that the person creates a pair of entangled quantum particles with a private information. Then that information is sent to the receiving end. Then the one on the receiving end will observe the information to obtain the information. But let's say that the information is transmitted, but in that process, an eavesdropper tunes in, and this eavesdropper observes the particles to steal the information that be pink or blue. Then the state of the quantum will change. Then the receiver will know, or the sender will know at that immediate moment that this information was stolen, that somebody tried to read the data. And this is quantum cryptography. Of course, there are many other factors to factor in for quantum cryptography, and the actual technology is much more complex. However, the underlying technology is quantum entanglement. Now let us move to quantum computing. I'm sure that you've heard of this terminology, quantum computing. And the computer that we use today, which is in contrast to quantum computing, is classical computing. In classical computing, the basic unit of information is bit, which has a value of 0 or 1. Now let's say that a system has 12 bits. The 12 bits initially have a value of 0. And let's consider a scenario in which all values are converted to 1. Then since we have 12 bits, this means that to convert the value, a total of 12 arithmetic operations will be required. However, then what about quantum computing? Then quantum computing uses quantum bit, qubit, as a basic information unit in contrast to classical bits. And because this follows the principle and rules of quantum computing, its value can be either 0 or 1 because they share the state. And all 12 qubits are in a state of 0 initially. However, now these 12 qubits are in an entangled state. Let's assume that they're in an entangled state. Just like classical computing, if you want to convert 0 to 1, then since all the states of all qubits are entangled, then the state of all 12 qubits can be changed with a single arithmetic operation. So by using quantum entanglement, we can dramatically reduce the number of operations, and that becomes the basis of quantum computing. I gave you 2 examples today, quantum cryptography and quantum computing. However, quantum entanglement serves as the foundation of all quantum technology. So now it's all about how far you can go with quantum entanglement. And in Korea, we see much development in quantum technology. These are some of the research studies conducted at Korean universities. But even other than this, various institutions and universities, including communication, computing, sensing, and cryptography, all the researchers are very much taking great interest in quantum technology and driving studies in this field. And now, recently, research has started to go beyond the realm of academics and be conducted at a commercial level. Large companies in Korea have started research and investment by taking interest in quantum technology, and the Korean government has designated quantum technology as a next generation core strategic technology. And About many decades ago, in the 20s, quantum mechanics was only a hypothesis. So when this concept was first born, well, Einstein contributed to quantum mechanics. However, when the idea or concept of probability comes in, we all know that Einstein was against that hypothesis, that idea. And we talk a lot about the argument between Bohr and Einstein back in the 1920s. But then, from 60s to 90s, thanks to the three laureates and their research outcomes, we showed the evidence that quantum mechanics is the winner. And we were able to see the advent of lasers and GPS and other quantum technologies that have become pervasive in our daily life. And now a second quantum revolution is underway. And we have various technologies that we can witness now that aggressively use quantum entanglement to drive up the speed and the level of the technology. So this field has received much attention from the researchers. So I very much look forward to how quantum mechanics will transform modern technology and our society in the future. With that, I would like to wrap up. Thank you very much.
Yes, thank you so much for this very good explanation and discussion. One of the questions I actually had was, of course, many of us are aware of the concept, at least quantum technologies, and we're very curious of where we're heading, so to say. And you described very well these different application areas that we can foresee, and that was one question I had, actually. What application areas can we see? But that was very nice. I think this, as I interpret the area, it's also a quite... there are very many researchers in the field of physics, obviously, but how are these three individuals, how do they kind of point out, how do they, what do you say, stand out in that field, and why these specific three individuals? Do you have any reflections on that, or?
I can tell the story of John Bowser. So during his PhD, he became interested in the foundations of quantum mechanics, and this was very fashionable at the time. And he knew that there was this experimental setup in Berkeley that he wanted to try to use to measure this these quantum correlations. So he went there for a postdoc, but in astrophysics, I think it was. And he discussed with his supervisor and said that, I'd like to do this foundations quantum mechanics. And the supervisor said, yeah, you can work half-time with that, because he thought that was interesting, you know. And so he even got help with some PhD student, and they spent 2 years to rebuild this machine. It used calcium atoms and to produce back-to-back entangled photons like this. And then they finally measured this and published it, and I don't think they got, you know, there weren't any ovations or anything. This was a nerdy, narrow thing. At the time, people, you know, quantum mechanics was obviously working, so why bother, you know, about the foundations that way? That was a little bit the attitude. So, yeah, and I think he really stands out because he got the idea by himself. He pursued something that wasn't fashionable. There was no obvious use or impact of doing this. He spent 2 years rebuilding this apparatus before he could do one measurement. So what did Sigbert say? So determinism, creativity, curiosity, right? So he had all those three, these three ingredients. Yeah, so I think that's a very illustrative story,
Yeah.
and I'm sure the stories are similar for the other ones, but this one is the most known one.
Thank you. Yeah, that's very interesting. Do
Yeah.
you have any
And
questions?
these three professors' work really nailed down the quantum mechanics, so to speak, because there are many arguable things regarding quantum mechanics. It works, it can explain things, but we don't know what it really is. That was the status of quantum mechanics at that time. But the experiment of Professor John Clauser and Anton was really nailed down that Einstein's idea of a hidden variable was wrong, and the entanglement, the non-locality, is the key for quantum mechanics. And that really opened the new era for quantum information science, because nowadays we are using quantum entanglement and the non-locality for developing new technologies. And Professor Zeilinger really investigated this new idea of quantum teleportation, the sending quantum information using these entanglements, and that's really the foundation of quantum technologies these days. So I think when I first heard their Nobel Prize this year, I was really astonished that they haven't awarded yet. It's this year, right? That was really surprising. I was really surprised. So their work is really that important.
Thank you. Thank you for that. As I understand it, this prize also it points out the importance of experiments and infrastructure and all of that. In this field, is that a big issue or of infrastructure for physics, let's say, in this area? Or
Infrastructure is always an issue. There could always be more and more advanced infrastructure, and it's very expensive.
is it a showstopper for further steps, or
Depends who you talk to. But I mean, in this instance, I think the infrastructure wasn't very advanced.
No?
No.
Exactly. So, but where are we today, so to say, in this field? Is it still, it wasn't so advanced infrastructure, is it?
So as far as I know, it's big companies who can now build quantum computers. They are leading in the number of entangled qubits. And it's difficult for a university-based project to compete with that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
What's your perspectives on the methodology in this field? Is it more from a theoretical perspective or more experimental perspectives?
Yeah, so infrastructure is really important in this field, because at that time also to produce entangled photon is really difficult, and how you do that really depends on what you have in your lab. And these days, thanks to the industrial development, we now can just buy lasers or good microwave sources, like good infrastructures from companies, and that really helps a lot to conduct experiment in the universities as well. But as you all know, better infrastructures are more expensive. So if you are in a bigger group, it's a little bit easier to conduct these experiments because of the infrastructure. But if you are just the beginning researcher in a small university, then it's a little bit harder to get access to these good instruments. So that's always the issue for all research areas. But yeah, in this particular field, it's a little bit more severe problem, so to speak.
And as I understand it, then you're moving into to more of where industry is really interested in this, and they invest heavily, and they are really engaged, also from what we could call research side. So is there obvious roles for you as researchers in this situation we have today? compared to where they were in the 60s, so to say? What role does a researcher do in the phase where we are today, where industry is so heavily involved? Is there a challenge there in finding your role, so to say?
Like a university researcher.
Yeah, university researchers versus the industrial.
I guess people do their best with what they have.
Yeah.
Yeah, so these days there are certain, so we call platforms for like different systems. So I'm from quantum computing area, so I'm a little bit focused on quantum computing research when answering this question. And there are like major companies who are now investigating quantum computers, and there are major platforms, so to speak, like superconducting qubits and ions and etc. So if you are doing research on those platforms at the university, then now you need to compete with the big companies at the same platform, and that can be quite a challenge because now a research lab in a university, there are limited resources, of course, compared to the like giant companies, right? Like in terms of people, in terms of money and everything. But now what universities can do is they can explore various platforms, like not only superconducting qubits, but other platforms like small, like neutral atoms or photons. There are like companies for photons these days, but also photons and molecules and other things like silicons and etc. And we can easily investigate new ideas at the universities compared to the company, and that's what researchers at the university should concentrate.
Very interesting reflection. I mean, I work in a field that is very mature in that sense. Industry is very engaged and invest heavily, and it's important for the researcher to find their role in that context, so to say. So it's hard to compete, but it's easy to find. Okay, we do this and you do that, and together perhaps we can drive the area forward.
You find your niche.
Yeah, exactly. And finding means to collaborate as well. I'm not sure if that's possible to collaborate with the big industries in this field. So you do it together, kind of thing, or how is it done in Korea? Do you work?
Yeah, there are many groups now who are collaborating with companies to accelerate the research. Yeah, of course, there are many collaborations.
Yes, we have some question actually. Should we start with a question from the audience? We have some questions from online as well. First online, okay. I'll read it out. Could we ever use the theory of quantum mechanics to predict climate change and the upcoming pandemics? Is there any reflection on that?
Yeah, I have an answer.
Yeah?
So to predict climate change, quantum mechanics is definitely used, just in the quantum chemistry sense, because various processes in the atmosphere you need to describe on that level. So the forests emit particles, and these particles, their light absorbing properties, you have to compute with quantum mechanics. I think we have some people in the audience who might say that I'm right there. Anyway, so in that sense, but it's also for us who do quantum mechanical simulations, which I do, it would be fantastic to have a quantum computer to do that, because to solve a quantum mechanical Hamiltonian on a quantum computer is really easy compared to using a classical computer. So those are two answers on the climate change. Upcoming pandemics, maybe you want to answer.
I think there are a little bit of similarity between climate change and pandemic, in a sense that many parameters are involved in those two things, climate change and as well as pandemics. And if quantum computers are developed a little bit further, then they can process a lot of information a lot faster, then we can predict maybe climate change. We can calculate climate change or upcoming pandemics.
Thank you.
And the second, when the particle is purple, is it because we don't know if it's really blue or pink? Yeah, so it's in superposition. It's in a I'm taking your question, sorry. It's in a superposition of blue and pink, or blue or red, so it's both, or neither. And we certainly don't know which one it is, yes.
Okay.
It hasn't been decided yet, even. So it's not just that we don't know.
No.
The particle has not settled on one state. It's in a superposition.
It's hard to understand for the deterministic brain like this.
Yes,
but,
exactly.
yeah.
We can't model this on anything that we experience in our daily lives. So the only way to build an intuition is, I think, to use quantum mechanics in your job and just get used to the theory that it's works like that, and see some examples, and then you can sort of you get used to it.
Yeah.
That's what understanding is often.
I think we have time for a very quick question then, if you have one more question up there. Then we're turning it to the next.
Thank you for the presentation. And I have a question about, I think it's going very important, the computing power, the semiconductor, and the industry is very growing fast. Is it the quantum computing I know is very different from the classical computer from the ground, the bit and qubit and the special quantum algorithm. And so do you think the quantum computing is going to be some kind of breakthrough to the computing power to be used in machine learning or any industry? Yeah, this is my question.
Okay, I'll answer. Yeah, absolutely. If quantum computer is developed, well, there are certain kinds of quantum computers already, but if we have more qubits in quantum computers and more error corrections and more algorithms, and it will be a breakthrough. And there can be questions if quantum computers will be something like our personal computers that we have, like everyone has. That I'm not sure, but there will be some kind of quantum computers at certain center so that everyone can access to it, and then the quantum computer can provide faster, of course, faster operation for certain kinds of calculations, as well as some calculations that even supercomputers cannot do. So I think that's going to be a really revolution.
So you think the quantum computer can be revolution of better than the classical computer and replace all the things like machine learning things?
I need to be careful to say that it replaces classical computers, because there are certain calculations that classical computers do really well. So I think at least in near future, quantum computer and classical computer will go together. And for certain calculations, quantum computers does a lot better, so we use that. And we can also build some algorithm so that information can go back and forth between quantum computers and classical computers, so that we can have some synergy effect between the two platforms.
Thank you.
So by that, I think we should close this discussion on physics. Very nice. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Thank you.
And we're moving into the third category within sciences. And once again, perhaps going between these topics, I think this is perhaps even more thrilling. Anyway, chemistry. Chemistry relates both to physics and biology in some sense. It's the foundation of understanding how processes and change take place. What can be more thrilling than that? And this year on such a fascinating term as click chemistry. So we are fortunate enough to have two guides, Professor Sven Ledin and Professor Dongwan Lee. So please. I would like to introduce the experts here. We have Professor Sven Ledin, received PhD from Lund University in 1990, postdoctoral stays in Australia and Germany, and an assistant professorship at his alma mater, and then getting the chair of inorganic chemistry at Stockholm University in 96. Returning to University of Lund in 2010 as professor in inorganic chemistry. Sven Ledin is also a member of the Royal Swedish Academy of Sciences and working for the Nobel Committee for Chemistry from 2003 to 2015 and served as its chair in 2012 to 14. So you're well into the topic of Nobel Prizes. So, Professor Sven Ledin, you're welcome to introduce the prize to us.
Thank you. So the question is, of course, what happened? Do I have a clicker? Yes. Ah, very useful. Thank you. What happened in 2022, or did it happen in 2022? Because, let's see. It was a long process. Of course, it didn't happen in 2022, although the will of Alfred Nobel states that this should be something that happened last year. This certainly has never been true. The first prize in chemistry that went to Van 't Hoff, in his Nobel lecture, he says that I will begin by discussing experiments that I did 15 years ago, but I will begin with discussing work that laid the foundation for this. Even the first prize was awarded 20, 25 years after the actual experiments were made. So with click chemistry, this has actually been around for a very long time. The term was coined around 2001 when Barry Sharpless got his first Nobel Prize. I went to a lecture of his expecting to hear something about asymmetric catalysis, but he spoke about something else. He spoke about click chemistry, and I must admit, I did not get it. I did not understand what it was all about. Well, you do a quick search today and you realize that many others did. It's humbling. Sometimes you just don't understand what it's all about. The idea of click chemistry was to have reactions that are so highly specific that only these reactions happen. To make sure that you really have this golden handshake between two reactants that are not confused by anything else that happens, but that will take place safely, quickly, repeatedly, and only give one product. This is sort of the antithesis of organic chemistry, where normally the yields are rather low and you make the synthesis in many, many steps, and you end up with an extremely small amount of the compound that you're trying to make and huge amounts of waste. And that was one of the goals that Sharpless had with the idea of click chemistry, to reduce waste. But there were many, many other positive aspects of this. So what happened then? Well, he did have one specific reaction in mind that actually works. But it took the work of someone else to take this to the next level. And here comes in the Danish chemist Morten Meldal. An interesting thing about click chemistry, it reminds me very much about how you put together IKEA furniture. And I noticed that IKEA was one of the sponsors here, so I can mention them. you notice that in the male doll bed, which actually exists, this is put together by a number of very specific joining elements. They don't fit together in any other way than once. Now, if you've tried to put together IKEA furniture, you may notice that every now and then you may make a mistake and you have to redo it, but it's pretty clear that you made the mistake. And the joining pieces fit very well in pairs. And that's the whole idea of the click chemistry, that there is high predictability for how things will go together. The third recipient was the inventor of bioorthogonal chemistry. And this is something that wasn't really planned by the first ideas of click chemistry, but we quickly became one of the most important features of click chemistry. Because the very fact that this golden handshake only works between two very specific functional groups means that you can actually introduce such a functional group to a bioactive molecule, and it will not react with anything within the cell where you introduced it until it meets the perfect mate that you have designed for it, which then can click on. And this means you can add artificial functionality that does not interfere at all with the biological functionality. And this means that you can probe a chemical reaction in a living cell. You can alter that reaction. You can change how things are coupled together without affecting anything else. And this is a huge difference to what normally happens when you tamper with the complex biochemical systems of a living cell. You all know that drugs tend to have counter effects on each other. When you get to my age and you take several medicines for several different things, you know that these tend to have effects on each other. The fantastic thing with click chemistry is you can introduce something into a living system that doesn't really affect it, except in one way, the one way that you have designed that it should affect it. So, this year's prize, which you will get a lot more specific information on by my colleague here, what does it tell us about chemistry? Well, first of all, it tells us materials chemistry is still very important, because this is materials chemistry. This is a way of making new materials. So for 2022, we have the development of click chemistry and bioorthogonal chemistry, which certainly fits into the framework of materials chemistry, for which Bertozzi, Meldal, and Sharpless are rewarded. In 2019, there was the development of lithium-ion batteries, Goodenough, Whittingham, and Yoshino. 2011, there was the discovery of quasicrystals. So lots of prizes in this area the last 10 years. On the other hand, it tells us that biochemistry is very important, because this is biochemistry. This is how we design chemical reactions that can take place in living cells. So 22, again, Bertozzi, Meldal, and Sharpless. 2020, genome editing. 2018, evolution of enzymes and phage display. 2015, DNA repair. 2012, G-coupled proteins. But then it tells us that organic synthesis is very important. 2022, 2021, 2016, 2010. So what am I trying to say? The fact is that these definitions of different realms of chemistry are very misleading. They're all intertwined, and the Nobel Prize winning chemistry that we see affects many different areas. And this is just a small part of what's going on in science, because What does it tell us about science? Well, it tells us it's doing very well. Thank you. It tells us that there is no such thing as turn-taking. It's awarding what's considered most interesting right now, and that prize-winning discoveries cannot be put into a box. They tell us something about science as a whole. And really, this is not only chemistry, but it actually goes for the entire family of Nobel Prize-winning discoveries, that physics, medicine, and chemistry, they're all working together. We see how one area enriches another, learns from another, teaches another. And we are having more and more difficulties in saying whether, well, is this medicine, or is it physics, or is it chemistry? And in reality, it's probably all of them. So just to finish with the question that I know you're all wondering about, what's going to happen in 2023? Well, we don't know. And that's the good thing about this. There is always a surprise at the end. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Professor Ledin. Now I'm very happy to introduce Professor Dongwan Lee. Dongwan Lee is professor at the Department of Chemistry, Seoul National University, majoring in chemistry to receive degrees from the Department of Chemistry at SNU also, bachelor and master. Continued his graduate and postgraduate studies at MIT, was a tenured faculty member at Indiana University, Bloomington, before relocating his research group to SNU. He was a vice president of academic affairs of the Korean Chemical Society as well. So, very welcome to introduce the topic even further, Professor Dongwan Lee.
I don't know why, but chemistry always gets the third place. But let's get it started. Just one click away란 말이 사실은 금년 노벨상을.
So just one click away, I think that this best describes this Nobel Prize in chemistry. So this is a one-pager for a Nobel Prize, and this is quite a new for everyone. As Professor Ledin just mentioned, we'll give you more insight about why they won the click chemistry, and I talked about synthesis, and here at the bottom, using the click chemistry, what the professor did was she took it to another level. So this is a new for everyone. This is unheard of, as I mentioned. And from 1800, Google scans all the literature and looks at the frequencies of any set of search strings. And this is n-grams of Google. And if you search for click chemistry and bioorthogonal, you can see that prior to 2000, well, almost no one searched these two keywords, and this was a new for all the scientists. So chemistry is all about making compounds. And I'm sure that you know that making connections, in the process of that, you have to make sure that you do not generate any loss or waste. And you have to make sure that you create or generate a compound. And back in 1950, this was a Nobel Prize in chemistry. It was given to Diels and Alder. And this was back in 1981, and they found out that the properties of electron orbits are critical in chemical reactions, and this is 2022. And they actually came up with the idea of the click between carbon as well as nitrogen, and somebody has to work on this, and somebody has to come up with this idea. And the beginning is this: we have to travel all the way back to this very person, Mr. Huijsen, who actually came up with the idea of cycloadditions, which is an addition reaction of cyclic molecules. And this was the start of everything. When I teach chemistry, a lot of chemists use these different arrows to come up with these diagrams. So you have 3 and 2, which makes up 5, and 5 means a formation of a compound. And as you can see here, if you look at benzene, it has a 6 shape, 6-line shaped. And as you can see here, the problem is this. This is azide N3. And this is a small piece. And once you add a chain here, then this becomes very inconvenient because you have the triple bond of carbon, alkyne, as well as nitrogen. And once you bind the two, depending on their direction, then you can get 2 different compounds, of course. So this means that the property will be different. So they have 2 different properties, and that can become a quite headache for everyone. So you will need to get rid of the waste because you didn't get what you really looked for at the beginning. Then what do we need to do? Well, of course, we will need to come up with something that can trigger this. And if you're not majoring in this field, this may be a new concept to all of you. So you will need a catalyst, but however, this does not work all the same time, especially when you want to do it in your body. You have to make sure that you go over the hill, and that is called activation energy. So you will need to have a transition state of a chemical reaction along the reaction coordinate. Then how can we make sure that it goes over the hill more smoothly? And that is where catalyst plays a role. And this is what the professors, so Professor Meldal and Sharpless came up with. So they came up with this idea of copper catalyzed click. So even in room temperature, even without adding strain, they found out that they could actually catalyze the entire process and come up with a compound. However, this is from your textbook. When the transition state does not go smoothly, then what we'll need is you will need to devise a workaround for the issue. So you have carbon-carbon, and then this is mono bond. So this is like a zigzag form. And then it will become cyclic at the beginning. And you will add the triple bond formation, and usually it's linear. However, what you will do, you will place it into a ring structure, but this is quite unstable. So Professor Bertozzi came up with this idea. Okay, let's say that if I come up with a workaround idea and make sure that I promote the strain by twisting the shape of alkyne, then it will become more reactive. And that was her idea. So you have these 2 different compounds coming up, producing a product. And you will have this idea. And what is so difficult about making this? However, in the reaction process, it generates so many byproducts and it leads to so much waste. And that really requires a lot of energy and efforts. So when it comes to all the chemical compounds, you have one default condition, and then with one single catalyst, if the yield reaches almost 100%, then what a great idea. And then you have a very complex structure, but you don't need to start from scratch. So you have the bulk pieces, and then you only need to click them together. Of course, it's not as easy as it sounds. However, you have all the different underlying conditions because you tend to worry about what if it breaks down, what if it doesn't work. However, click reaction actually overcame that problem because you just need to click at the last step of the reaction process. Then let us look at this. This is what Professor Bertozzi came up with. So as you can see here, this is in the living cells, in the living organism. Then you have the outer of the cell, you have the nucleus inside, and then inside, well, we say that it's a void space. It's like a plain in Mongolia, and you have one just building on a plain. It's as easy as that, or as difficult as that. So cells are very complex, and this is not in our imagination. If you look at the cells and the living organisms, you have all the different molecules swimming inside the cells. So cells are overcrowded. Then how do we come up with chemical reaction, and how do they react? We have peptide that generates protein, and we also have oligosaccharides, and we also have polynucleotides, and all these different living organisms, they do not interfere with one another. They do not overlap. And with bioorthogonal chemistry, well, this means that the molecules will not interfere with one another. Then what we have here, we have this sugar molecule, which will be fed to the cells. And what happens? Well, when the cells are modified, are fed with modified sugar with an azide on it, it will create a new cell. And by attaching what we need to on that cell, that opens up a new era of different research. And we briefly talked about Mr. Sharpless's Nobel lecture. It's about 40-minute lecture, and this is a slide that I have for you. And when you come up to about 30 minutes, he starts talking about something else. Of course, he is a very free-minded person, so that's not new. However, somebody may think, well, maybe he foresaw that he will receive another Nobel Prize in the 21st century. Anyways, if we travel back, well, this is what he came up with in 2001. He came up with asymmetrical reaction back in 2001. So this has high selectivity, and he came up with the concept of optical isomer. But then he starts talking about searching new reactivity, and this is the job of all the chemists. And in 2001, he focused on specialty chemistry, but then in the latter half of his career, he focused on a very functional and simple chemistry. Then let's do another time travel. Back in 1989, well, this is a special year because I joined SNU back in 89. And this is Seoul as we knew back then. This is the metro map of 89. If you look at here, well, you see the red arrows. You have SNU here at the bottom. And on the top left, you see Kwanak. So you may think, oh, is that Kwanak that I know of? Why are they so far apart? And Kumjong is all the way to the left from SNU. However, now, let's come back to 2022. This is the Seoul as we know as of today. And as you can see, the map became very complicated. And if you drill in, then Kwanak became quite closer to SNU. Why? Because back in 89, in Seoul, Sadang and Kumjong were not connected by a line. So they were very far apart, and SNU and Kwanak were two vastly remote locations. However, the world has changed. You have two different spots that now are brought together. Why am I talking about this? Because science is expanding its realm. And Professor Sharpless came up with the idea of click chemistry, and that gave way to bioorthogonal chemistry and gave way to new language in chemistry. And no one knew that, no one predicted that. However, if only can we connect the different dots, then we thought before that it was two different universes. However, now we found out that they were actually one universe that could be connected together. And I hope that one of you or some of you could connect the dots and expand the realm of science and the universe. And in that sense, well, it was not just about connecting molecules, but it was about connecting different sectors or fields. And I just wanted to give that as my final message. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much for this descriptions. Sorry. So, some brief reflections on this prize as well then. What you touched upon, Professor Ledin, that the areas of medicine, physics, and chemistry, they're intertwined. And I start to think of application areas of these research, and I think you mentioned a little bit on that. Because the mind quite quickly goes to medicine and the complex proton-based medicines that they talk about. Is that, or what can you say about application areas of this click chemistry?
Well, as Professor Dongwon Lee said, I mean, we are getting these unexpected connections, and I think the very nature of a discovery such as this is that it's an enabling technology, and at the same time, it's fundamental science. So how do we even think about how to build molecules? And by having a different way of thinking about it gives us availability to new instruments and to new solutions. And so I would say the impact is everywhere, from material science to medicine. You can, by using the click concept, you can add functionality to a material that is supposed to be used for something completely different, and then you can add a separate functionality without altering any of the other properties of the material. And this can be these can be electronic properties, these can be mechanical properties, but they can also be antifungal properties, antibacterial properties, or something that is used in diagnostics or in therapeutics. So it's just an entirely new palette of possibilities that organic chemists have opened to us. I've heard someone describe this as organic chemistry for dummies, because it means that you can do organic synthesis without really knowing how to do organic synthesis. You just say, I want that, and I want to put them together. And actually, click chemistry can make that work.
Right, I think chemistry, well, chemists often try to draw analogy to like architecture. So if you want to build a building, sometimes you want to mass produce identical apartments in a rapid way that you can complete your job quickly and very economically. Alternatively, you want to build a single house, which almost looks impossible to build. But the building process really inspires you, and think about, wow, it's possible to build it this way, not the other way. Oftentimes, people think that certain reactions are for mass production, certain reactions are for specialty construction. Click chemistry has both components together. I think in that way, it had really an overarching impact in a way that you are not limited. Well, it's quite mundane saying that, well, you are only limited by your own imagination, but I think click chemistry really represents the concept.
Thank you. I think this could be discussed and explored for a very long time. This is super interesting, and I don't think you should be sad that you came third. You know, when you present a podium, you present the winner last. So
Thank you.
So I would like to thank you, the both of you, for explaining and contributing to this area. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. All right. Well done.
So by that, I welcome our, what do we call you? Yeah. Master of Ceremonies.
And with that, thank you very much, moderator Professor Viktorsson. I think we should give the moderator a huge applause as well. And before closing altogether, for a few closing words, I invite back to the stage Professor Sigbritt Karlsson, President of KTH Royal Institute of Technology.
Wow, I had the most difficult task, I think. I will not summarize what have been said, but I would like to thank all the participants for your presentation and their interesting discussions. And also thank you, audience online and here in the auditorium, for good questions. Physiology, medicine, physics and chemistry still have many unexplored questions. Any one of you who are interested in pursuing a career as a researcher, use your curiosity, creativity, and determination to explore and formulate new research questions. I would like to say something of every one of the three categories of Nobel Prize. I will not speak lengthy. So I start with physiology. The big question that all humans had asked themselves forever, I think, is where do we come from and why are we as we are? Have, through Svante Pääbo research founded, got us a little bit on the way. And I think we will see more in that area. The physics prize, quantum phenomena, quantum entangled photons, I must confess, Anna and your colleague, this is maybe the most difficult part, possibly for me, because I'm a chemist, so maybe I understand click chemistry better, but still, there is a promising future understanding quantum entanglement with application in communication, cryptography, sensors, computing. I thought I heard teleportation as well. So that would be interesting and really save the climate if we could teleport ourselves. Chemistry then, click chemistry. I know when this started to be a research question for many chemists. I remember that. And it's also really inspiring for one of the three prize winners that have, in fact, received the Nobel Prize twice. I'm not an organic chemist, but I know that the reactions usually have been targeted on avoiding waste, and now it seems there is a really good way to do it by using click chemistry to reduce the waste. And I also find it very interesting that Bertozzi have been able to use it to modify key elements with key molecules without sacrificing biofunctionality. It's really, really useful in material chemistry. We talk about circular materials, green materials, but also in application in medicine, it's important to reduce the waste. So this concludes the presentation of Nobel Prizes in Science. Thank you for now. Kamsahamnida, is it correct? Thank you very much.
So welcome back at 4 o'clock for the session on economics. And this closes the session on the science, as the professor said. Thank you very much.